Okay, we are live. So, hello, my name is Gina Lucita, and you are
I'm Jack Meyer.
awesome. Nice to meet you. And maybe we can just open this up to you discussing about your books and about yourself.
Okay. Uh, I actually am a retired businessman. I spent 40 some years doing various types of business endeavors. And when I retired, I decided to begin writing. Uh, I My first book was published in April of 2023, and I write in kind of a different type of series. I call it the Wayward Patriot series. And the concept basically is that someone or multiple people in the story are really consider themselves patriotic and love their country. Um, but as they're tempted, sometimes they'll step over the line, thinking that, well, this is for a good cause, and all sorts of catastrophic events take place. So, when I say it's a series, we have that kind of backdrop. I've had two books published now, plus a novella. And in each case, that's kind of the theme. However, they do not have the same uh, characters in them.
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit more about the main characters in the books?
Well, I try to make my characters as common, everyday people as possible. Uh, I write suspense and thrillers, and so I always want my main characters to be confronted with situations that they could never have even imagined themselves being in. Um, I want characters that my readers can relate to and cause them to think, oh my gosh, what would I do in this situation? In the first book, the title is Wayward Patriot Preserving the Vote. Um, we have a guy that works for a high tech company, and this company uh, was responsible for developing the perfect, flawless online voting system so people could register, vote from home, and with cybersecurity checks in place, uh, they would they could be comfortable that their vote was secure and would be counted properly. Well, this man lost a friend, and he was going through his friend's papers for his wife um, not long after the funeral, and he comes across a piece of paper that shows votes, vote tallies for a particular district in a special election that has yet to take place. And after the election takes place, those vote tallies were exactly as the election happened. The results were exactly the same. Someone found out what he knew, and he became a target for murder. So the book is really about this poor guy trying to convince the FBI that this perfect voting system was not perfect. Um, and he also ultimately learned that the friend who died had been murdered, and was working with the police to try and convince them of that instead of the accidental death that they thought. So that's the first book, and it gets into cybersecurity and things of that nature. My second book is called A Higher Betrayal, and this is a man who he's an insurance salesman. He has an insurance company in Minnesota. The United States senator from Minnesota decides he's going to retire, and my main character decides that he's concerned for his country and he's going to run for that U.S. Senate seat. though he has no experience. So in this case, the book follows him through that election process where he's up against the political elites that don't want anything to do with him. Um, and ultimately, as it progresses, he finds that he's at odds with the president and many in his part, well, all of his party, with regard to what they intend to do about border security. And ultimately, murders are involved, and he's running for his life, and he's trying to understand what the president's up to and trying to reveal that to the people. So they're both thrillers. In between, I did a novella called In Defense of the Grid. It also has a little political background. The Secretary of Energy is trying to convince the president and her cabinet of the serious vulnerabilities that our electric grid have from two possible problems. One could be a major solar flare that would wipe out the electric grid for months, if not years. The other would be an electromagnetic pulse, which is something that an enemy could create by exploding an atomic weapon in shallow space just above our country. And that would have even a more serious impact. So this guy's trying to convince everyone. It gets into some political back and forth between China and the United States, and the wayward patriot. So there is a wayward patriot on this one too, and it's kind of a sad deal. But anyway, those are the kinds of things I like to write.
Oh, those books seem very interesting. And are those behind you, your books up there?
They are. Up here is A Higher Betrayal. That just came out in June. And the one next to it is Wayward Patriot, Preserving the Vote. And then I had one here. This is In Defense of the Grid. And this is only available in ebook format. And in fact, the novella is free. So any of your viewers can download that for free by going to my website and signing up for my newsletter.
Cool. And I have a question about your publishing process. Did you go through like an independent publisher, or did you do KDP on Kindle? Or how did you publish it out?
Well, the first time I published myself through Ingram Spark, and then I started with the paperback, and then once the paperback was out, I published the ebook on KDP, and then the second, or the I guess the novella, which I did in between, it was available only on ebook through Amazon. It wasn't part of KDP, or it wasn't part of what's their special Kindle thing where people can read for free. Anyway, the book I just published, I actually started with Kindle, and that is going now until the 1st of September, and then I'll publish the ebook also through Ingram Spark. And I also published the paperback through Ingram Spark at the same time. So both are available.
That sounds pretty cool. Can you maybe walk us through your process between starting a book, writing it, and then publishing it?
Uh, Actually, when I started this, I knew nothing about anything. I just sat down and I started writing. Um, my sister had a connection through something totally non-publishing related to a person that would help people publish their own books. And she helped me with the first book to understand a little bit about what was going on. But so when I write, I really start with just the writing process. I will work to get the rough uh, draft completed to my satisfaction. I'll have a few people read that I know and trust. In fact, I have a friend. As I write a chapter or two, I'll send it to him, and he goes through. He does some minor editing and gives me some feedback, and I may adjust and whatnot. And that's kind of the way I go. Once I'm finished, then I have a editor that I work with. I send to her, and she goes through it bit by bit, and we're back and forth, as I'm sure you're aware how that works. And depending on how busy she is, it might take a month or 6, 8 weeks. But she's worth it. She adds value to everything that I've written, and I appreciate her a lot. So once that is complete, I've learned that even though the editor has gone through as carefully as she can, and she proofs it as well, I know that there are still mistakes, typos and just little things. And so I'll go through that again, and I'll give the book out to a wider population and ask them, tell me anything they find. And I'll get those, I'll make those corrections. I'll really focus on laying out both the ebook version and the printed version. And then the last thing that I do then is I will read the book out loud, either to myself, or sometimes we do this when we're driving. My wife and I travel some. Sometimes when we're driving, we'll just take turns. One drives and the other reads the book out loud. And I found that usually able to catch almost all the little flaws that are left. Once that's done, then I go through the process of downloading and making them available. From a publishing standpoint, once they're available, then it's a matter of getting the word out. And I think that's, I'm sure, the most challenging part of it. Going into my first book, gosh, I had no idea. I didn't have any followers. I basically reached out to every friend and past work associate and whatnot, and made them aware and got myself set up on social media, although that's not a strength of mine. I don't like to, type messages into X 3 or 4 times a day, or even 3 or 4 times a week. So, that's a challenge for me. But, over time, got the word out more and more. Now, since that time, I've developed a newsletter, and I've worked on generating or increasing the following of that newsletter. Newsletter is called Patriot Aims, AIMS. It's kind of a play on the Patriot Games word. But I've got over, I guess, a little under 3,000 followers now for Patriot Aims. And I send out a newsletter every month, just once on the first of the month. And the newsletter talks, the first part, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs, I just talk about my experience as an author, what I'm doing, writing on the next book or in the publishing process and editing. I just think some people are interested. They've never been an author, they don't know. So I do that. And then on the second portion of it, I kind of talk uh, very independent terms about some of the goings on in our political system and ask people, well, what do you think of this? Is this a good thing? Is this good for our country, bad for our country, whatever? So I just try and get people thinking about some of those things and ask them to, write back if they have thoughts or whatnot. And I'm very careful not to approach it or to approach it as apolitically as possible. Whether, I want it to be interesting and informative to liberals and conservatives alike. So that's kind of the way I do that. And then I also make free books available through my newsletter, and I have connections with Crave Books, and we'll set up giveaways through them. So I want to provide my readers something of value other than just me rattling on that they can get from my newsletter.
That's awesome. I do love that. And newsletters and social media can really help a lot. We do have a question from the comments. Somebody asked, what do you think about people writing books with AI? Your opinion on it?
I guess in certain realms it might be fine if it's informational. As far as creative, I'm opposed to AI being used for creative writing, primarily because I think it's drawing information from other sources, people who have written those things in the past without giving them any recognition or acknowledgement. So, if it's an informational brochure, fine, but I don't like the people using AI for creative writing. And I haven't read a bunch, but I would think even as great as AI is, that would be difficult to match the human mind as far as creativity goes.
I do agree. I'm very with AI. I do think that there is some good use for it, however, because there is some people like me who are dyslexic and they can't write or read as well as they wish, but have great creative ideas. And instead of making ideas, they can always spell check things
Mm-hmm.
and help them write their ideas better.
Yeah, yeah, and I have used AI in research for my books. Matter of fact, the book that I just published, AI is a significant element to that story, and it's ways in which AI can be utilized in nefarious endeavors. So, one of the things I try to do with my books is to educate people. I try to research things. For example, in Wayward Patriot, Preserving the Vote, I sat down with a friend who is an expert on cybersecurity and picked his brain and whatnot. And from that, I developed this perfect voting system and kind of described. So people who are kind of into tech got a chapter or two on how this works. And most of the feedback I got was, yeah, that's kind of interesting. How did you come up with that? But it also educated people on what the drawbacks are from, the perfectly secure system. So it's some learning process there. In this last book, uh, AI again was a big topic, and what some of the drawbacks are in using AI in military situations, and the way that people's voices and even uh, images can be replicated to the point that people, even though they may know these folks, can't really tell that it's AI. So I try to develop things like that that people might find interesting. I do the research so they don't have to.
Yeah. And like educational type books are really good. Like I myself, I prefer creative things over a lot because I love my imagination, but at the same time, I would definitely go with educational books as well because it's just good to learn and know things.
Yep. Yeah.
What would you hope that readers take away from your book?
Well, I guess in general, again, I usually have an element or two in there that I'd like them to walk away and go, I never thought of that. Where vulnerabilities are, where vulnerabilities are in our political system. I'm writing political thrillers for the most part. Um, but, you know, what some of the vulnerabilities are within our existing systems and cause them to think, maybe we need to be cautious about things like that. Um, the AI thing is an example. And using AI in military settings and how it can be used against people. The other thing in my recent book, uh, I describe this campaign that this newbie is involved in, and how people, even of his party, are working against him at every turn because they've already picked who they want. Um, and I think a lot of people may not realize that politics works that way. Especially now we're sitting here in this situation with Joe Biden. Suddenly, nobody wants Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. Well, where were those people back when the election process started, and they were keeping everyone else from joining the race and running? So they didn't have primaries in half the states because no, Joe's our guy. And now look where that's uh, put them. So, just things like that. I'd like people to walk away and go, or I wonder if is that really true? Is that is that really a problem? So I try to raise questions in people's mind and cause them to think.
There's a lot of people, myself included, who don't seem to know a lot about politics. It
Mhm.
just seems like they don't teach a good amount about that in school. And for what we know, it's all about, voting for the president, but you hardly ever see people like vote for Congress either. Like I hardly
Mhm.
ever see that happen. And just from what I know, a lot of people don't know a lot about politics.
Yeah.
So we kind of
Yeah.
have to make assumptions based off what is posted on social media.
Yeah. And unfortunately, who knows where that came from? Could come from AI. Um,
Yep.
so, in fact, somebody had during this campaign, I don't remember the details, but they had used an AI version of President Biden's voice to do robocalls against someone. So um, it's it's interesting. I mean, the social media is so open and free flowing, and everybody's got an opinion, and everyone can share their opinion, but that opinion, or they may or may not be accurate in what they're saying.
Yeah.
So it's hard, and I know that especially young people now, they get 80% of their information from social media.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess it's good to be cautionary, and sometimes you might want to sit down and do a little research. What are the issues for this Senate campaign, and what do these people that want to be senators think? And you know,
Yeah, definitely, because it's just so easy to lie on social media and make up things that people just all of a sudden believe. And if you have a big following, you have just a lot of people believing that and sharing it and getting it to more people.
yep, yeah. So,
So, what has been your most challenging part of writing your book?
the promotional element for sure. I'm generally I don't know if I'd say shy, but I'm kind of a reserved personality, introvert. And so, getting onto social media and sharing all about myself, is hard for me because who cares about me? That's my thinking. I'm no different than anybody else. Um, and but and I guess since I've retired, I'm not writing for money, uh, but I would like for people to read and give me feedback. I write really to entertain, and I like to hear positive feedback. It strokes my ego, of course, and whatnot. But I don't think I'll ever be a top, New York Times top 10 writer. Um, but it's just uh, so it's hard for me to do that. I will hire companies to help me from time to time to market my book on Amazon, whatever. I'll try different things. Usually they don't involve me a lot. This is something that's a little bit new. I've done a couple of online interviews and I've really enjoyed them. Uh, but in terms of going out and putting myself out, I don't know where would I go. Who. I don't know enough about um, the programs like yours to know even who to approach. So that's my biggest challenge is that.
Definitely. I believe that maybe if it kept going, that one day you can get your book really big and really out there. I have definitely belief in that. One good thing about these interviews is I know you said you don't like putting yourself out there and stuff. A lot of people like to see you out there. They kind of like seeing that side of you because then they know
Mhm.
you're a real person, you care about the book, and they're more likely to purchase your book.
Yeah,
So that is one good thing about stuff like this.
yeah. Well, and like I say, I enjoy doing it, but in terms of how do I how do I get there, you know,
Yeah,
that's more of a challenge. I need to work at it.
I
And
totally.
in the midst of everything else, I've got to be playing golf. So, that's
So how did you come up with the titles for your books?
um, well. Interestingly, the first one, um, when I started writing, I had one book. I had one story that I had in mind, and I've had it since the year 2000. Um, you probably uh, aren't in a position to remember, but maybe in the history books you saw that in the year 2000, in the presidential election, uh, George W. Bush versus Al Gore, um, got to the end of the election, and every nobody had the votes to win, and Florida was so close they had to do a recount. And watching television back then, uh, in Florida anyway, voting was done by taking a computer card, putting it into the voting system, and then you'd take this pin and you would poke a hole in that card where, next to the name that you wanted to vote for. Well, showing this recount, they were holding these computer cards up, and some of these little dimples didn't pop out. So you had, and these terms were from that deal. You had dimpled chads, where it looked like someone had started to punch it out, but they didn't press hard enough. You had hanging chads, so maybe there was, you know, one was barely hanging out and another was gone or whatever. And these people were trying to divine what this voter was intending by looking at these cards. Well, when I saw that, I thought this would be a cool backdrop to a thriller. I was into reading Clancy and people like that. Um, so I thought, someday I'm going to write this thriller, and I finally did in the year 2000 or 2020. Excuse me. I started. I had actually decided not to write it because I thought, oh, this election integrity thing probably isn't even relevant anymore. Nobody would remember the 2000 election. Well, then you got the 2020 election, and it's been nothing but. So I went ahead with it. So that's where I came up with the idea for that. And the title itself, I think my brother, when he read it, after a few people have read it, I say, what do you think for a title? And we go through back and forth on different titles. And he had come up with The Wayward Patriot because somebody in there in the book has done something wrong, and it's just led to all kinds of murder and mayhem. I thought that was kind of interesting, but it didn't really say much about the story itself. So I added preserving the vote. So it's Wayward Patriot : preserving the vote. I kind of regret doing that because when people see that, they say, oh, it's an election denier. And, they think it's a political book, and it's not. It's totally apolitical. In fact, the feedback that I've gotten from it, they say one of the things they like is it's not pushing people to a conservative or to a liberal point of view. It's just telling a story. So that's where that one came up with. The in defense of the grid, that I came up with on my own. It's just so telling. And I don't know if you've ever heard of an EMP, but if something that could take out our electric grid in a huge swath of the United States or even the entire country for multiple years. And if you can imagine, we couldn't be doing this. Your cell phone wouldn't work. Your automobile wouldn't work because it's got computer components on it. They couldn't transport food products because vehicles don't work. You wouldn't have heat. You wouldn't have air conditioning. You wouldn't have light. And you wouldn't have it for years. Imagine people who have studied this say it could result in the loss of life of 90% of the United States in a year. So, and those are serious statistics. So I thought In Defense of the Grid was a good one, with this guy trying to convince people that we need to do something to defend our grid from these possible issues. And then the last one, I had sent the book out to 6 or 7 people to read early on, and I asked their input. When I look for titles, one thing I do, or when we come up with a few, first thing I'll do is I'll search online. Are there any books that have those titles or similar titles? I don't want that. So that will cast those aside. And A Higher Betrayal was one that a woman came up with that I liked, and we didn't see anything that was out there that was similar, so we went with that.
Yeah, I get that. I've been trying to publish my own books, and the biggest issue that I've had was the title, because every time I come up with a title in my head, I search it up on my computer and it's like there's already books with that title.
I know. Yeah, that's a challenge. Do you get
Yes.
other people involved?
Huh?
Do you get other people involved?
Um, not really. I mean, my mom and my partner, really, that's it. But
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I did, and I almost forgot to mention this, is when I had about three possible titles, uh, I went to my group of newsletter followers and I asked if anyone would like to join kind of a little focus group for a week to 10 days and help me with titles. And 10 people did. And I just started by asking them. Uh, I gave out one title at a time and I asked them, what does this make you think of? What do you think this is about? Does it sound interesting? And whatnot. And that weeded out several that I liked a lot. But I was trying to focus, since it's, I write the thriller genre, I tried to focus on, if you saw this book and this title at the library or wherever, what would cause you to reach and turn it over and read something about it? So that's what we came up with. The title I liked was called 51 Stars. And there's an element in the book that relates to, but uh, that just didn't float with the group. So
that was a great way to get ideas. I promise you that your followers love to get involved. That is
yeah,
definitely one thing that people love doing. They love getting involved in these creative stuff.
yeah, it was fun.
Which kind of brings me to one of my next questions. Do you belong to any writing groups or communities, and do they help you in any way?
I have. I belong to the Pikes Peak Raiders group. I'm in Colorado Springs, uh, and uh, I guess I belonged to them for a year. The types of things that they do is uh, they get together. They have two or three things a month where any of the members, writers that want to get together and either write or critique one another's stuff, different things that are helpful. Um, they can get together and do that. I think I attended one or two, and I don't know. It's nice to rub shoulders with other authors, but at the same time, I didn't feel like it helped me that much. They do have a wonderful writers conference every year in May, and I would recommend any author to go. I'm going to say 3 days, and it's for readers and for writers. But you have a lot of authors that do workshops, famous authors. They do workshops and help people with just all sorts of things. Um, so that's a benefit. You don't have to belong to attend. We have international people come in to that one. The group I'm involved with now is called the Colorado Writers Group. It's wider, um, and there they actually do a little bit more in helping to sell the books. We have book racks in various places, retail centers, coffee shops, and whatnot, where we can place our books and sell our books locally that way. And they do a lot of online promotional things and that sort of thing. So those are the groups that I belong to. I like to go to the uh, Tucson Book Festival each year. That is over University of Arizona spring break, so it's usually around the end of February, 1st of March, um, and that's huge. Again, it's probably as much for, or even more so for readers, because so many authors are there, and they, you know, talk a little bit about their books, and you can get your book signed and things like that. But they also have some good workshops that they have these authors uh, present, and learn things along the way.
That does seem very fun. I like things like that. It's always so much fun. Um, so at what age did you like realize that you first wanted to be an author?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess I don't know exactly when that happened. I've always been pretty good at writing, even business writing. When I was, you know, working, I could write uh, succinct, communicative memos and the like, so that, you know, that was effective in that realm. I've always had kind of a creative side to me. That probably came from my family. My mother was very creative. We used to get together, my siblings and I. We still do this from time to time, and we write kind of silly lyrics to different songs, melodies. My wife recently turned 70, and she's a year and a half older than me. So anytime she has one of those big birthdays, I'll have a surprise birthday party for her, and kind of an over the hill deal, because she's going and I'm not there yet. But I wrote some special lyrics to Sweet Caroline, and you know, they're usually a roast or two, some jabs in there about her getting old and whatnot. But I changed it to Sweet Barbara Mine. Her name's Barbara. So I've always been creative in those terms. Uh, as far as when I really thought about, well, maybe I'd like to write a book, probably there around 2000. So I was probably, what, 45, 48 years old. So,
Oh, and that seems like a great way to get creative and like keep going, that music stuff.
yeah, it is. It's fun. And actually, you know, when I set out to write, I was going to write one title, and that was it. That was the only idea I had. And the gal that helped me, I mentioned her, kind of helped me learn the publishing side, the basics. She really encouraged me to write something more, you know, do a series, do something. She was very encouraging of my writing, but also she says, "You're going to do all these things and set up websites and all this for one book. You know, if you enjoy doing it, do it, and then you've got the infrastructure then to help promote it, you know, over time, help promote the new ones too." She was very helpful.
I love it when people are supportive.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
so this wasn't something you went to college for, right?
Not at all. My degree is in aviation management, and I got a master's degree in global management. So, nope, never did.
Me, I decided I wanted to do writing when I was 6 years old.
Really? That's great.
So, yeah, and I have not published one thing. I actually have like 18 stories I started in 2016 and are not finished. I'm trying to get them finished this year though.
Well, I mean, I can understand. I've met a lot of people that struggle with that too, and a lot of times uh, they, I don't know if they get bored with the story and they start something new and whatever, or if they kind of hit a writer's block. But what I find out when I'm writing, I don't press myself for time. Uh, I don't have a deadline, so that's nice. But I also, if I get stuck on something, I just drop it for a while. I'll play golf, I'll do things like that, and I'll maybe, I don't read as much as listen to audiobooks. I'll go hiking and listen to audiobooks, and I'll do this work around the house and listen to audiobooks. And sometimes those things will uh, cause some idea to come in and say, "Oh, we could do something like this," um, and then I go back to it. I could never be working on multiple books at the same time. I guess my mind just doesn't work that way. Some people do, and some people do it very successfully. That's not me.
Yeah. See, my problem is, I mean, could blame it on the ADHD, but I start a lot of projects and never finish them. And this year, I'm realizing that I don't want to keep doing that. I want to full on finish a project. So I have written over 200 poems. And as much as a lot of my stories are more creative, like I like fantasy and horror, I am trying to get my poetry book out first because I've written over 200 poems, and that is something I can actually complete.
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you have a a timeline? Do you have a next steps in the process of putting them together and getting them published?
I'm actually working on the manuscript in Word because all my poems are published on allpoetry.com or Wattpad.
Mhm.
So I'm manuscribing them into a Word document. I looked at all the things on how to do it. It was a little bit difficult. And then I'm hoping to publish through KDP. I don't really know how to do all that, but assume that I could try figuring it out as best as I can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's I've done a lot myself. The I wrote my first book in Word. My second book I wrote in Scrivener. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's really designed for writing, and you can move things around and move chapters, and you can kind of uh, flesh out characters and have them in a file here. And it's got a really good structure for authors. And then you forget something, you can it's easy to go back and find those things out. So I found that was much easier. The other thing, the first book, I paid someone to do the layout and to do the cover. Um, Cost me a lot. I wasn't totally happy with the result. Um, this time I did it all, and Scribner allowed me to do the layout with no problem. It's very flexible and whatnot. And I happen to have a daughter who's an artist, and she helped me with the uh, book cover. And I've gotten a lot of compliments on a Higher Betrayal book cover, um, but she did all the work. I kind of had the idea, and then she put it all together and made it look good.
Oh, that's awesome having a daughter who's an artist.
It
Makes
is,
your
yeah.
book look very good.
Yeah, thank you.
And she does a wonderful job.
She does, yeah. And this is not up her, main bailiwick. She sells art. She enters art contests. She teaches art, both at elementary and high school level. And she also writes children's books. She's got 3 or 4 children's books that she's published. And of course, she does
Right.
her own pictures with that too.
That's awesome. See, I try to get into art. I'm not really the greatest artist. I was writing children's book when I was in middle school. I was trying to read it to the little kids. They did not click very well with it, and my art was terrible.
Well, we have to learn what our strengths are and go with those.
Yeah. Okay, we are running a little bit out of time, so let's just narrow this down to the last questions. Um, so how long did this book take you to write from start to finish?
Um, well, the most recent one, I guess I got started seriously in August of 2023. And I started working with the editor in February. And we had the manuscript primarily complete by uh, early April. So,
That's great. Um, and our last two questions, that's what we're down to.
okay.
What advice would you give to aspiring authors?
To just sit down and do it. I mean, make time for yourselves. I've seen some things that people do for themselves. I mean, authors come in all shapes and sizes. We've got working moms who are authors and single moms who are authors and whatnot. And the way they've indicated they do it is they budget time. If it's, if they're serious about it, they'll get up at 5:30 in the morning and whatever, 3 or 4 mornings a week, they write for an hour, right till the kids get up. Um, and they hold themselves to that. And I think, that's the biggest thing. Um, the other thing is, daydream, be creative in your thoughts. If people have an idea of what they, would like to write, if they write humor, if they write thrillers like me, or whatever the fantasy and horror, just develop some ideas. I'm a person they call a pantser, and that's because I write by the seat of my pants. I just start out writing, and I may know where it's going to go for the first few chapters, and then I let it flow. And if I can't figure out where it's going, then I just stop and I think about it, but I don't do anything else. I just think about that, and then once I figure out the direction I want to go, then I'll sit down and I'll keep writing. So just keep thinking or writing on a routine. Make yourself do it. It's really rewarding. It's fun.
Definitely. And I could probably add on to this advice. Um, me, I am the queen of making excuses. So definitely one thing, we have to stop with the excuses. Because if I think about it, if I didn't make as many excuses as I have, I could have done so many things. So many things could have been completed already.
Mm-hmm.
And in this day and age, there's so many ways to get things done, especially if you have social media. And anybody watching this has social media.
Yeah.
Um, you can reach out to people too, and just like meeting people sets and opens up new doors too. So honestly, if we just didn't make as many excuses, people could get done so many things.
Yeah. And the other thing is, uh, have a writing buddy, even if they're not, if they don't write,
Hmm.
tell your story to them and, kick it around, and people are excited to do things like that, even though they may not have the skill or whatnot or the desire to write, but it's fun to help someone else with their story. And, uh, it's fun to talk and kick that around with friends. Like I said, I have a special friend that both books, actually, well, all three, the novella as well, chapter by chapter, he went along with me and pushed back and said, "Oh, I like that," and whatever. And we had phone calls. He actually lives in Arkansas, so most of it was done via email. But um, it's fun to have someone else involved, and it's also motivating because I knew he was waiting for the next chapter, so I figured I better get going.
Yep. Okay, and our last question. I ask this to everyone at the end of the interview, even if you have answered it before. Where can we find your books?
My books are available any place, just about online. Amazon. The only thing with the new book, Amazon, for whatever reason, Kindle isn't picking it up yet because it's a Ingrid Spark published book. It usually takes them several months to add those. Um, but there is someone that's selling it for $4 uh, over list retail price. But Barnes and Noble, Kobo, any of your favorite online booksellers. My website, which is waywardpatriotbook.com. You can get links to order any of my books there. You can get the free download of the novella there. And you can also order autographed copies on my website if someone would be interested in that.
This is the website for anybody that's watching. There we go.
It is.
All right.
Thank you.
And awesome. It was very wonderful to meet with you today, and I'm grateful for all the people who came and watched as well. Hopefully, more people check you out. This
I hope
we
so.
want. Yep.
It was
And
wonderful meeting you, and good luck in your writing career.
thank you very much. And if anybody else wants to do an interview, it can be about anything creative, doesn't even have to be about books. You can email me here, kingdomofhoursofficial@gmail.com, and I will email you back. Okay, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much.